Welcome everybody today to another installment of our Meet the Chief series. And today we're very, very fortunate to get Chief Master Sergeant Stephen Larson, who's hailing all the way over in Hawaii right now. And so we're on different time zones, but thank goodness technology can connect us. And so tell us a little bit about where you started things off. So hometown, and then what led you to the Air Force?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Ohio, near Akron, Worcester Hospital. Grew up in Marshallville, Ohio, really small town, not too far from Smithville, Orrville, Smuckers and Smith's Dairy and all that. Yeah, I grew up there. Went to high school in Parma High School, which is a suburb of Cleveland, and then went on to study at Cleveland State University, with the Cleveland Orchestra, percussionist and timpanist Tom Freer, and yeah, had a great experience there. That was my pre-Air Force kind of experience. After I went to Cleveland State, during Cleveland State, I went to I auditioned for the Canton Symphony, Erie Philharmonic, performed there for 3 years with each of those orchestras. And then a friend of mine who was also going to audition for the Air Force Band told me about the Air Force Band and what the Air Force Band was all about. I wasn't sold at first instance. I had to be convinced that it was a great idea, and I'm so glad that he took the time to do that. I'll always be grateful to Jerry Noble for talking me into auditioning for the Air Force Band. And so I went out to Wright Pat, auditioned in the spring of 1999, and the rest is history.
Awesome. So you started at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base?
That's right. Yeah. So I auditioned 1999 in the spring, went to basic training in June. Actually had my 21-year anniversary 2 days ago. So I graduated, went to Wright Pat, served for 7 years at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I spent a lot of time in the concert band and the brass quintet mostly, and then went to Lackland Air Force Base, where I was a military training instructor for 6 years, from 2006 to 2012, serving under various commanders, but always at the 323rd Training Squadron, and mostly as the entire time as a drum and bugle corps instructor. The last year also as the additional duty first sergeant for second half of 2011 and the first half of 2012. Then got PCS to Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, just outside St. Louis, Air Force Band of Mid-America there. And yeah, that was a great experience too, because, I like to tell people I had 7 great years at Wright Pat. They were very rewarding years. I loved it. I was, the first part of my career, I was playing a lot of music and, kind of fulfilling that part of my musical calling, if you will. And then, but it was 7 years in the same place, and, 6 years of those with the same commander. And I think I was ready for a change. And so, I went down to Lackland and revisited the place where, it all starts for basic training, and had an awesome experience there. Learned a ton, grew an immense amount as a human being, as a leader, and as a man. And then, when I was there for 6 years too. So when I came back to the band, it was like a fresh start. Whereas a lot of people by, 13 years in, a lot of people, by the time they hit 13 years, they're kind of, starting to slog through a little bit. It's not quite as exciting and fun as it was in the very beginning for a lot of people. Not necessarily for everybody, but, if you're doing the same thing for a long time, it could be, that change was very welcome for me. And when I came back after those 6 years at BMT, it was a total fresh start. It was awesome to be back in the band career field. I don't think I'll surprise anybody by letting you know that it was an easier transition back to the band than it was to be, from the band to become an MTI. Not to take anything away from that experience, but when I come back to the band, I'm getting hugs by people I don't even know, welcoming me back in. Man, we're so glad to have you, all this kind of thing. Whereas when you're, going to be an MTI, it's not exactly that same kind of. At least for me in 2006, it wasn't quite that same kind of experience. But yeah, so then after, so I was at Scott Air Force Base from 2012 to made chief in 2015, and then PCS'd to Langley in 2016, where I served for a couple of years as their chief, and then PCS'd out here, was selected for assignment for to be the chief enlisted manager for PACAF. And so I'm serving here at Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii, part of Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam. And we've got our 15 members here and our 25 members at Yokota Air Force Base, Japan, which I like to go and visit and spend time with them as much as possible. But obviously right now, that's kind of a challenge. I'm not sure, when I'll get to go see them again, but we've had some online interaction similar to this. But, I look forward to seeing them in person here again real soon.
That's awesome. Well, maybe we kind of go fast forward to where you're at now. What's your area of operation for PACAF, and what sorts of products do you bring to the various countries that you serve? Because you don't just stay in Hawaii or Japan. You guys actually, travel to some other countries. And
that's right. Yeah, so our area of responsibility is the 36 nations in the Pacific. So, really, we have the largest area of responsibility in the world. Of course, a lot of it's water, but there's 36 nations out here, and although we have quite a few allies and partners, there are some significant adversaries out here too that we need to be aware of. And that's all the more reason to try and strengthen those allies and partners, which is really the biggest part of our mission out here. Of course, we're involved in headquarters support. We're here at headquarters PACAF, and we support the 4-star and the leadership team whenever possible and whenever necessary, and in any way that we can, really. But we try to get connected to the national defense strategy as much as possible. And, we have a strong part to play in the allies and partners piece, developing, strengthening those allies and partners, and gaining access to some areas within the area of responsibility that maybe some of the other military organizations aren't able to do right away. And if we can, crack open that door in certain places, then theoretically, it should be that much easier for, at some point for us to put an airfield down somewhere, or to become stronger friends strategically with some of these other nations and become partners and start to, be more interoperable as a force, and, really secure not only our own interests, but the interests of these other nations. And I think, the Air Force Band can do a really good job of that by changing perceptions of people that maybe have never seen a Air Force military member in person. And, when we show up and we're bringing what they call soft power, and we've got, music that we're bringing with us, we can maybe connect emotionally with those individuals from all kinds of different lands, whether or not we speak the same language. I think it can break down a lot of barriers and change some perceptions that people might have had about what an American is like, and what an Air Force Airman is like, and what the United States military is all about, especially because some of our adversaries are actively painting a different picture of us. And, we have to counter some of that propaganda, if you will, counter some of those messages. And it's really easy to do when you're right there in person, face to face, with a goodwill message, a message of partnership, a message of, working together for common goals. It's not a hard thing to do. We just have to get out there and do it.
What are some of the highlights that you've had so far? I'm sure many, but maybe a few in particular that stand out during your time at PACAF.
During my time here at PACAF, you know, there's been a few. The biggest, I would say the biggest highlight for me personally, I got to go to Mongolia as a part of a Pacific Angel mission, as a humanitarian mission where the Air Force from the United States and from Australia partnered together and went to Mongolia with some engineers and some medical personnel. And they, the engineers were fixing a school, doing a lot of work to this school and to some other buildings in the community to try and improve it and make the lives of the people there a little bit better and show some goodwill from the Air Force, as well as, of course, the medical personnel, perform some activities there and help the local folks out in all kinds of medical ways. And then the band, interestingly enough, the band we only sent a few of us because where we were going was in Darkhan Ul in Mongolia. It was really far off the beaten path, and it was quite a trek to get there. But we went, and they have their own military. It's not exclusively a military band, but they have an armed forces band that is also part of a infantry battalion and a foreign language school. And a lot of the members of the battalion and the foreign language school also play instruments, and I think they're kind of doing double duty. But we got to perform with them as part of the closing ceremonies for the humanitarian mission out there. And it was really something. First of all, we had, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 days of interaction with this band where, the first day we show up, I'm pretty sure this is the first time a lot, if not all of them, had seen Air Force, U.S. Air Force members. And so we show up, we're in their building, a few of us with our instruments, and they performed for us a little bit. It was very rigid and very kind of formal-ish. And then we started, speaking that common language. We started integrating a little bit. Our trumpet player went and sat in with their brass section. Our vocalist, sang a song that we'd prepared, some music ahead of time, both of us, both the Air Force band and the Mongolian Armed Forces band. But, then we finally integrated. I played some drums, and it was pretty special because as soon as you start playing the music, none of the rest of that stuff, I don't want to say it matters, but you kind of lose sight, and you're all musicians on a stage and we're playing the music. And then of course, when we start rehearsing, there's some language barrier issues, but there was a number of them that spoke very good English. And, none of us spoke Mongolian, although we had a translator with us. He was very helpful and very kind. But that common language that was really tremendous, and we built a relationship with those individuals that we still have, honestly, to this day. I still talk to some of them on Facebook and other places, and standing on that stage, I got to conduct the United States national anthem in Mongolia. I got to conduct a Mongolian Armed Forces band with a few Air Force band members, PACAF band members. And then I got to turn right around, go sit behind the drums and play the Mongolian anthem while their senior enlisted leader conducted that. Meanwhile, the Mongolian Minister of Defense is there. The U.S. ambassador to Mongolia was there celebrating the end of this humanitarian mission. That, to me, was really what it's all about, building those partnerships. We're talking about an infantry battalion in Mongolia that is, a lot of influence in that region from Mongolia. If you don't know where it is, it's basically wedged between Russia and China. And being a partnership there and hopefully build a friend in the Mongolian military is tremendous, I think. And to use the power of music for that, and to see the, you know, the humanitarian capability at the same time was amazing. And so, yeah, that was, I think that's the biggest highlight of my PAC experience so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, speaking about language barriers, or you know, how you want to look at it, I want to say there's maybe over 50 different languages probably that you engage with in your area of responsibility. So I want to say you guys probably program accordingly, and maybe have some songs that are, you know, maybe the vocalist learns, you know, a little bit of the language for that song and stuff, and maybe how you've seen that, how important that is, that you kind of, you know, embrace their culture when you go there and perform.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, you know, we do, when we go to a foreign country, and additionally, not just going there, but also for our virtual products, we oftentimes will do research to try and figure out, you know, what songs are popular in a region, especially if there's a local song. We'll work with the embassy to find out kind of what's something that would connect well with the people, what's something that you know, would come off favorably if a American sang it. And then sometimes we'll get some, you know, some pronunciation lessons even on how to sing and speak these words and that sort of thing. But yeah, our singers do an amazing job. Our vocalist Brand at Yokota do an amazing job. The team in Yokota sings in Japanese all the time. And, you know, both we've had our folks singing, I can think of singing songs in New Zealand, which I know you might think of as, you know, an English speaking nation, but it's got strong Polynesian roots with their own language. And they, you know, they have a lot of culture there, and they certainly have their own language, and it's very different. And so our folks have sung in that language. They sing in, you know, the Papua New Guinea language, and really almost everywhere we go, whenever possible, we'll try to incorporate something like that, because often happens when the people see that you've invested the time to a little bit about their language and their culture, they take you a little bit more seriously, and they connect that much better and closer. And you know, it certainly helps to strengthen those bonds we're trying to establish. You know, if we can come to them where they are, and with them, you know, instead of trying, I think it can kind of remove some perception that we're trying to, you know, force something on them. We're just trying to share in their culture, and appreciate our differences, and appreciate what they uniquely experience and what their, you know, experience is. But at the same time, bring and communicate the greatness of the United States, and how, you know, a partnership can be a very good thing. And you know, we want to remain to be the security partner of choice in the Pacific, and, you know, making friends and is a whole lot better way to do that than what some of our adversaries are doing. And I think people sense that right away when we get into a location and we start performing music for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine it goes such a long way. Like you took the time, it brings a, you know, intimacy and a real dedication that they appreciate.
Right.
I wanted to kind of go back to, so not everybody in the band career field leaves the band career field and pursues being, you know, an MTI or something similar. But I know several, I know Chief Herb spent some time teaching PME. Tell us about that experience a little bit, and what you brought back to the band career field with a unique perspective, having spent that time as an MTI at BMT.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I don't know how to say this. I was always attracted to Lackland Air Force Base. I was always attracted to basic military training. I've had a strong appreciation for the military in general my whole life. And, you know, as kind of a, it probably won't surprise serious musicians that, you know, I think there's a lot of crossover between being successful in pursuit of discipline and being a really good musician. You know, you have to be willing to sacrifice certain things and to pursue goals. And, you know, I've got, in addition to just that kind of interest, and I had a good experience at basic training, and I don't want to say that I enjoyed it in the moment, but I appreciated it, and I appreciated the growth that I saw in the people around me, and I really appreciated the discipline of that experience. And quite frankly, I really appreciated that, in my mind at least, that was one of the few places left on earth where it seems like if you were told how to do something and what you were supposed to do, you were held accountable. Like, there was no, like, well, I'm sorry, I was gonna, but then that thing, and you know, there was no lame excuses accepted. Anybody that's been in the military would understand that. And I just appreciated that. Like, you're gonna do what you're supposed to do, whether there's the easy way and the hard way, and that's it. You're gonna end up doing what you're supposed to do. So, you know, I had 5 young kids. I have 5 kids still, but I had just had our youngest when we went down there, and you know, that was a factor too, because on the one hand, I was looking forward to maybe some time with less TDYs, because of course the band, you know, would go TDY a lot in those days, and you know, I wanted to be at least in the same house and with my family a lot more often. And I didn't go TDY for 6 years, even for PME, which was you know, which was a little bit unusual, especially for an Air Force band person. But also, you know, I wanted to be the best father I could be, and you know, I knew that there was some skills that I remember learning there that if I could learn those and learn, you know, some of the MTI skills without maybe obviously not taking some of the more overbearing things back home with me, but some of the discipline things, you know, maybe I could be a better father. And additionally, you know, I was promoted quickly back then. I made, you know, staff sergeant on my first try, tech sergeant on my first try. And I knew I was going to be a senior non-commissioned officer at some point, and maybe I was going to be a senior and a chief as well. And I didn't want to be an average, you know, master sergeant, or I didn't want to be a weak master sergeant. I didn't want to be an undeveloped leader. And I knew that there were some things that the basic military training instructor environment would really help me to get to that next level. And so I thought that, you know, being at that time, I went down to Lackland with a line number for tech sergeant. I knew that at that time, that would be an ideal time for me to develop some of those tools to take me to the next leader, or the next level as a supervisor and a leader. And I really wanted that. So, you know, because I wanted to be effective. I had an awesome experience, right, Pat? Had some great percussion sections that I got to perform in, and I made a lot of friends. And you know, I got to perform as a soloist in front of that band. Anybody that was in that band in that era, you know, will probably remember, whether fondly or not, I can't say, but you know, they'll remember. I played an awful lot of xylophone and marimba solos with the Band of Fight back in the day, and those were great experiences. But I was ready for something different, and Lackland offered everything I was looking for, and it was definitely a success in terms of meeting the objectives that I set out for.
And I would imagine, and maybe kind of give me some insight, probably up the conversations with the rest of the military, because sometimes we have to find out how we fit in as musicians in the military. It's a balance for sure. And we know
Right.
what our mission is, but being able to communicate across career fields, I would imagine you probably gained a lot from being on the ground and really, developing all sorts of airmen, not just musicians, because anybody that knows, or those that don't know, when you go through BMT, you'll have some musicians in the drum and bugle corps, maybe one
Right.
or two, and then the rest are, maybe people that played instruments at one point, but that's not what their career field is. So I think you create a good impression as a leader, as an MTI, for those not just going into the band, but in other roles as well. And then coming out of it, I'm sure you're able to kind of educate us, you being, the musicians in the career field that maybe haven't had that experience yet or whatnot, and you can kind of, fill in some of the gaps or really kind of drive home how we connect to the rest of the Air Force, how we really bring that story and mission forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, when you're in the band, you join the band. Most of us, I think, probably all of us, join because we love music, and we're kind of singularly focused in music for the first few years, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We're airmen, learning about the Air Force in those early years, and then when you go to ALS, you kind of get the first taste of the rest of the Air Force and the rest of the career fields post basic training. Of course, during basic training, you get to know a little bit, but you don't even know what your own career field's going to be like yet. So you're really just all experiencing this thing together, and then it's over, and you go off to, in most people's cases, tech school and then their career, and we go to our band and do the thing, and do that for a number of years until ALS. You kind of start to get that experience, like, oh, okay, these are all. That was the first moment for me, I think, when I realized that, I'm in the real Air Force. Sometimes in the band, we have this false idea that we're not in the real Air Force. The band is unique and the band is different, and, it's kind of either special or weird or whatever. And, we do have our own culture, of course, and we do have our own idiosyncrasies and our own characteristics, but we're all in the same Air Force. And it's when I went to ALS, I first kind of realized that, like, all these senior airmen in, security forces or medical. I went to ALS with a OSI agent and, some other people, like, you realize, oh, we're all doing our specialties in the Air Force to pursue, larger objectives. And we've all got our own roles to play, but we're all doing it. We're all serving the Air Force on its bigger whole. And you start doing those briefings about, what your career field is and all that. And you start realizing you have a lot more in common with these folks than you thought you did. And that just continues. And then, like you said, going to BMT for sure, being a MTI, being one of, at that time, 2 active duty military training instructors who were from the band career field. And the MTI career field was, I want to say we had around 500 MTIs or something in that range. So, not a lot of band people to talk band with. And so, so most of them had never met an Air Force band person at all. And they had all kinds of perceptions about what the band was like. And it was fun to break most of those perceptions while I was down there, because, I know our culture, our culture. We've got some amazing people that do amazing things. I think that there are people in the Air Force band, career field, who can do, almost anything. There's no limit to, because we've got so much talent and so much drive and so much discipline and, so many amazing people that could do a lot of different things. But there's a perception, you're dealing with mostly, at that point for me, mostly staff sergeants and tech sergeant types that had been, in other career fields. And it was fun to get to know them and, like, go run PT with them and, kick butt, quite frankly. And then go up into the dorms and rip up some trainees, or, do all those things that MTIs do, and, break all of those stereotypes about what they think the band is, even though most of them have really never met a band person. And so, I made some good friends down there. I still have some good friends that I made while I was down there. So made some amazing mentors down there as well. And, a lot of I've been in the Air Force long enough now that a lot of the MTIs that I served with went on to become like command chiefs and I can think of second Air Force command chiefs and, other high level command chief types that I knew and served with. And, and there's more to come, quite frankly. There's some more in the wings. I'm like, man, this person that I sat down with and, used to eat at the snake pit with, there's a good chance they might be one of the next chief master sergeants of the Air Force, or, some other things. And so it's funny to, have that experience, but at the same time, build that connection, as a band person. And hopefully, I like to say that one of our jobs is to change perceptions and influence people in the Air Force band career field. And I was doing that the whole time I was down there. I was trying to change perceptions and influence people about what the Air Force band program is and what an Air Force bandsman is like. And yeah, you build those relationships, and a lot of those I still have today. And, I think that's a big part of it, not just in BMT but, all of our PME programs, and, getting involved around the base as well. You can continue to do that. It's obviously a little bit trickier now, especially depending on where you're located, because we all have these different, COVID restrictions right now, depending on your location. But yeah, it's all about building relationships and, influencing people and breaking down those barriers and changing perceptions. And I'm gonna do my best to continue to do that no matter where I'm at.
Yeah, you definitely hit on a really great topic as far as, I think sometimes in the band, and like maybe early on, like you said, prior to ALS or whatnot, we can get in a little bit of a bubble. And so,
right.
I would imagine, and what would be your advice as far as for the new bandsmen, young bandsmen, to get out of their comfort zone and maybe go integrate with some other career fields through volunteer work or this, that, and the other, to really scratch that surface a little earlier than waiting till ALS or,
Right. Yeah. The best advice I can give to a brand new airman in the band career field, especially, but really not even limited to that, is to find a good mentor right away and ignore the haters. Like, those kind of go hand in hand. But I know you've got Chief Herb out there, so I'm going to talk about Chief Herb for a second. I've told this story to him before, so I'm sure he won't mind. When I first joined the Air Force Band of Flight out there at Wright-Patt, I graduated from basic training and I was super motivated. I told you I had a pretty good experience there. I was super motivated. I was so excited to be in the band. I was very excited to see what the future held. And of course, in my mind, I was very motivated to hold all of the standards and pursue excellence in everything that the Air Force had. And Chief Herb, Staff Sergeant Herb at that time, was my sponsor, and I have to say, in those early days, he was one of the guys I looked up to the most. He was one of the guys that, little things that airmen notice. He was one of those guys whose uniform always looked good and his haircut was always sharp. And, he was addressing people professionally. And, I'm not going to say I agreed with everything that he did, but he did his very best and was trying to be a professional NCO much earlier than it was cool. Much sooner than most other people in the band, you know. There was a perception, you know, it's easy to fall into, you know, this other camp that, you know, they might like to think of themselves as musical purists, where, you know, hey, I'm doing what I have to do for the Air Force, but I'm here for the music, and you know, the rest of that stuff, I'm just going to do the minimum of whatever I need to do. And you know, anybody that spent any time with Chief Verb knows he is not a slacker musician, and you know, there's a false choice there that you can only be one or the other. You can only be a great musician or a great NCO. And so, you know, I would encourage our new airmen to search and seek out that, you know, that mentor that is a positive influence in both the musical arena and the airmanship arena, because those people exist and they're happy to help and mentor. And stay away from the people that'll drag you down and give you bad negative advice. And that, you know, some of those the people that maybe should have got out of the Air Force but haven't for one reason or another, and they're hanging on. You know, find the people that are positive influences that'll lift you up both musically and professionally. And I'll say this too, you know, there's for our new airmen out there, especially in today's era. When I say stay away from the haters, it's certainly not just the people inside the organization, but you know, there's haters outside of the organization too. And it's easy to limit yourself or to about what somebody might say about a performance or about about the fact that you're just in the band and you know, you play an instrument as part of your service to our country, and you know, all those kinds of things. Just ignore those people. You know, there's a great quote by Teddy Roosevelt that one of the PA commanders at Scott Air Force Base, PA directors at Scott Air Force Base share with us when I'm there. And that's about, you know, the difference between the man that's in the arena versus the man that's sitting outside the arena being critical of what the man in the arena is doing. You know, it's a much smaller person that is just going to be critical and hate on what you're doing from the outside. It takes, you know, it takes guts. It takes real courage to be the man inside the arena, inside, you know, playing the instrument, performing for our country in support of our national defense strategy, and understanding that that's a real thing and pursuing it anyway, in spite of the fact that, you know, there might be some, you know, crusty haters out there who just want to disparage and take cheap shots. Ignore all of that, because none of that noise matters in the end anyway. So yeah, that would be my advice for our new airmen.
Absolutely. Very sound advice for sure. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you got things to do, but I would love if you had a funny story so far with your I do know one that I'll allude to that Chief Herb told me when you were riding your motorcycles together down to the Chief Leadership School, and there may or may not have been a deer that crossed your path.
Yeah. Yeah, that was yeah, that was an interesting moment to say the least. But the good news is my brakes work, and yeah, this deer, like, you know, jumped out like he was gonna run in front of us, and you know, I hit my brakes, and then he jumped back like he was gonna run back into the woods. So then I let off the brakes, and then he jumped back again and crossed right in between us. Like, whoo. So, you know, for those of you that are taking the motorcycle safety course, you know, you cover your controls, you're good to go. That worked out, man. I'm so glad that, you know, that worked out the way that it did. But yeah, that was an interesting moment, to say the least. Oh, yeah. I do have a funny story. I'm going to go get a prop for this one.
Okay.
Let me be right back. All right. So I have to tell you this. When I was in the band of flight, like I said, I was born in Worcester, Ohio, at Worcester Hospital, and went to Smithville High School, which is not too far from there, for junior high and freshman year before I moved to Parma, and we were going to go perform. There used to be a big Rubbermaid factory or Rubbermaid store in downtown Worcester, in kind of the town square, if you will. Well, at some point, I don't know, I guess the publicity shop must have found out that I was from that area, from that town. And so they contacted the local newspaper and said, hey, we'd like to do a story on, the local boy. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. And, I've been in the Air Force like a year, super new. I didn't really know anything about speaking to the media or, representing the Air Force or anything like that. I was just, I'm a brand new airman, first class. And so this newspaper reporter calls me on the phone. She's like, hey, we're going to do an interview. Hope you don't mind. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions. And so they asked me questions about, where I grew up and, And they started asking me about what the concert was going to be like and what kind of music we were going to play and all this sort of thing. And so, at the time I'm on the phone, I didn't really know what else to say. I had gone to, I had been playing in orchestras, for years. That was my drive. That was my focus for the whole time prior to the Air Force. And, most of the time when I'm playing in these orchestras, like, it's very serious. It's very, dark music. It's very kind of brooding a lot of the time. And the Air Force band music is not really like that. It's more upbeat. It's more, obviously patriotic. And the word that I thought of was, I think I said something like, it's going to be happy, fluffy music. And so, of course, we go to sound check, we go to the short rehearsal prior to the concert, and the commander shows up, and he's got a newspaper tucked underneath his arm. And we go through the sound check, or he's like, hey, I just wanted to let you all know, we've got a star in our percussion section in our band right now. And he's like, yeah, Airman First Class Steve Larson just did an interview with, the local newspaper. I think it was the Worcester Daily Record. And here's the story. And he pulls open unfolds the newspaper and starts reading it. And, he starts with some of the good stuff. And then he gets to like, oh, and this is my favorite line right here. And he's like, yeah, so Airman Larson, what kind of music are you going to play? And what does Airman Larson say? They're going to play fluffy music. And I'll tell you what, that stuck with me. That was a moniker for a while. From that point, that was then Major Sirix, former commander of the Band of Flight. And yeah, he called me, versions of Fluff Daddy, Fluff Meister, the Fluffster, for years after that. Well, man, probably 4 years later, we went back and we performed at that same location. And, I'm a little bit older, a little bit wiser at this point. And, maybe a little bit rambunctious, maybe, I don't know. But he'd still been calling me Fluff Daddy for this whole time, on and off. And so, you know what? I went ahead and embraced it. And for that performance, I had a special name tag made that I still have on my desk today. And I didn't tell anybody about it. And I just showed up to the concert with that on my uniform, did the whole concert, and it was just kind of a game with me to see how long it would take for anybody to notice. and yeah, one at a time, like people noticed. And, you know, I think Senior Master Sergeant Dave McCormick was the first to notice, and he burst out laughing. And before you know it, like the chief found out, Chief Hans Marlette was the chief at the time, and he kind of pulls me aside, you know, as we're tearing down. You know, damn it, I'd already worn it. You know, it's too late. And he's like, man, I really probably should yell at you, but that's just too dang funny. So yeah, that's probably my funniest story. Yeah, it was a good time. Good times. I had a lot of great memories with that crew.
Well, hey, that's a great way, I think, to write out the interview. You know, thank you for sharing your time. Absolutely. You know, early in the morning for you and in the afternoon for me. And you know, it's just such valuable information. Like I said, before we started the video, connecting generations and really giving us early members some really sound advice moving forward. Like you said, don't wait to find your mentor and really grab the bull by the horns and
right.
That, you know, and 21 years in and many more years to come. And so, you know,
yep.
Thank you for your service and thank you for everything you're doing for the band and we'll continue to do. And stay safe out there and enjoy your 4th of July for sure.
Yeah, you too. Thanks very much, Airman Anderson.